Here we are, the final match of the Marvel March Madness tournament. Spider-Man Homecoming versus Thor Ragnarok. Without further ado, let's see who will go on to face Avengers Infinity War. The story of both of these films feel very polar opposite of each other, even if both of these have clever meta-texts about their respective franchises. Spider-Man Homecoming was about Peter Parker trying to find a place in an already big world full of heroes, which on a meta-textual level talks more about how Spider-Man might fit into the larger MCU after the Marvel-Sony partnership agreement. But aside from its meta-text, the story has some great conflicts between Tony and Peter, Peter and his friends, and Peter and himself. This film is the MCU equivalent of a coming-of-age superhero film. There is even a pretty good twist in the film, which I will get to in the character section. Thor Ragnarok, on the other hand, is more about having fun with the weird concepts and realities that come with Thor and his universe. On a metatextual level, this is Marvel saying, hey, this is how we should have been doing this character the entire time. However, what separates the two is in terms of pacing. Homecoming seems more streamlined and focused, whereas Thor Ragnarok feels like two different movies pulled into a central narrative. The pace of Thor Ragnarok is a bit too fast for what it really wants to do in its more emotional areas, which is what we will be discussing more in depth in the comedy section. Spider-Man Homecoming gets the first point. The action in both films are pretty good at what they do, but the one that I feel had the better action was Thor Ragnarok. As much as I love Spider-Man Homecoming, the action is kind of samey. While it has a variety of uses for its web shooters, nothing can compare to the craziness that is Thor Ragnarok's action. Point goes to Thor Ragnarok. When it comes to making likable characters, both films got this down very easily. However, if I were to award the point now, it would be given to Spider-Man Homecoming. And here is why. As mentioned before in previous matchups, Thor in Ragnarok feels too much like a different character than his previous outings. It felt like a lampoon of Thor rather than Thor himself, and while it is a much needed change as Thor has been bland in those previous films, I feel like it isn't the best incarnation. Aside from that, Thor Ragnarok has tons of great side characters like Korg. But what sets Homecoming above Thor is due to two factors: great support characters and a great villain. The support characters in Homecoming allow for the deeper themes of the film to be fully explored. Even the main character himself plays support for other characters in the story. The villain, as mentioned before, had a pretty surprising connection in the film, which made his plan, and subsequently what he has to do, more interesting and focused. Point goes to Spider-Man Homecoming. This is where the comedy in Thor Ragnarok bites itself in the ass. Remember those moments where we are supposed to feel sad for the death of Asgard, or even to be emotionally invested when Odin passes away? Moments like that are undercut by the film's comedy. It's overstuffed with it. As opposed to having an emotional investment and connection to our lead, most of his more emotional moments in the film are just completely undercut by the comedy. And while Spider-Man Homecoming's comedy and story is a gimmick from Hollywood's obsession with the 1980s nostalgia, the comedy in Spider-Man doesn't undercut the film's more emotional beats. When Spider-Man is stuck under a building in the film, he isn't cracking any jokes. You actually see his struggle. You see his need for wanting to become better than what he already was, to try to find strength within himself without the use of a Spider-Man suit, or the suit that Tony Stark gave him in the first place. Point goes to Spider-Man Homecoming. As expected for this final matchup, the base was kinda split, and while the poll didn't have great numbers, we ended up with around 13 different votes, 7 of which went to Spider-Man Homecoming, and 6 went to Thor Ragnarok. And so, in a 4-1 win, Spider-Man Homecoming will be moving on to face Avengers Infinity War next month. And that is it for Marvel March Madness. It is highly unlikely I will do anything like this again, so thank you very much for watching, and until then, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.